And I think knowing the impact of kind of all the anxieties surrounding futures and the world of work, it's very difficult to have a conversation about well-being without thinking about future planning. So there's some key questions that parents ask their kids, which are unhelpful. Those classic questions of how was your day? I think if a kid comes off their phone with social media in a bad mood, the parent should be able to have access to whatever is happening on their phone. You can learn how to write Python online now. You can turn a screen off if someone is frustrating you. What university in person can do is help you navigate those more adult situations.
This is the Voices of Learning podcast with AISB. Conversations around the skills and mindsets shaping the next generation. We keep telling teenagers to prepare for the future, but are we honest about how unpredictable their future actually is? Many of the jobs they will do don't yet exist, and many of the rules adults follow will no longer apply. So what should schools really be teaching now if knowledge is changing fast, careers are shifting, and certainty is gone? Is there only one way to succeed in life, and how can we prepare students for that academically and emotionally? Voices of Learning by AISB is a podcast for educators, parents, counsellors, and those who are guiding the next generation into a better future. I'm Magdalen Gray, and today's guest is my colleague, Pauline Davidson. Starting with a BSc in Sports and Health Science from the University of Surrey, moving to a PGCE in Secondary Education from the University of Exeter, then an MA in Educational Leadership from sunny Buffalo State University, an MSc in Child and Adolescent Psychology from Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and then finally a graduate certificate in College Counseling from the University of California, San Diego. Pauline has a host of skills that she's built over her learning and over her career. She's originally from the UK and has spent the last 22 years working in international schools, Thailand, Venezuela, Malaysia, Switzerland, and now is in her 5th year here in Hungary. As a school counsellor, Pauline works really closely with students and families as they navigate the exciting challenges of high school and beyond. As a global nomad, she relates closely to international families with a first-hand understanding of the benefits and challenges of life overseas. She's also a parent at the school with her 2 children in 9th and 10th grade, and her husband is here as the high school arts teacher. Hello, Pauline.
Hi, Magda.
Hi. So let's start with your role and how that's been established and how that fits into the life of our school and possibly into the life of other schools around the world. So what does counselling in your particular position consist of?
Okay, so I work in the high school. And across every international school that I've worked in has school counsellors, and there's a few different models, but here at AISB we have a comprehensive model, and that means we work with students on both the social, emotional and wellbeing side of things, as well as the academic planning and future planning. And so I'm part of a team of 6 through the elementary, middle and high school. There's 3 of us in the high school. And so me and Miss Withers splits grades 11 and 12 between us. And we work to help students navigate challenges that come their way, whether that's social challenges, emotional, mental health challenges, whether that's going through just a really difficult time in their life. And really then working with them on a way to, is there anything in their way of learning? Is there a barrier in their way? And our job is to really work with the teachers, work with the parents to identify, is there anything standing in the way of this child's learning experience? If there is, what do we do and how do we find a solution to helping them overcome that barrier and being the most successful in their learning journey that they can be?
Fantastic. And I hear that also involves opening up additional opportunities. So the barriers could also be that there's more that an individual student might need, or that it's really very personalised the work you're doing and over a lot of students. So that obviously takes a lot of learned skills, a lot of innate skills. How did you know that that's something you wanted to do, or what's maybe talk us through your journey? Because I think that will be really interesting to people listening. Is how does one get to do what you're doing? From a background of maybe education or from different backgrounds. What was your path?
So I think I started, my dad worked in management consultancy, and he was someone who always was very helpful in getting me and my sisters, to be self-aware and just know who we were as people. And really early on, I learned 2 very strong things that I think have always guided my own path. One is that I have to be around people. I love people. They fascinate me, whether they're adults or people going through challenges or children or, teenagers, which is where I am right now. I knew I needed people in whatever line of work I chose. The other thing was that I like to be useful. I wanted to be of service to others. I wanted to be helpful. And so I think I have fallen into counselling in a slightly more non-traditional way, a bit more of a patchwork quilt than a linear trajectory. So I started in sport, health and exercise sciences with my undergrad. I loved sport. I grew up on the track growing up. And so I was always fascinated through my degree on what motivated athletes in the field of sport. And as you can see, I've gradually now working with what motivates a teenager to learn in 2026 and how do they contribute to the world. So I think it's all come about as just a gradual journey of growth. But every single job I've done, and I've had a lot of jobs, a lot of different roles in schools, it's always come down to, have I got people around me? And am I being useful and of service? And is that service relevant? So I think that's really the key things that shape my path. It might not be a traditional pathway. I think you can go straight to university and study counselling and school counselling. I took a little bit of a longer route to get there.
Because presumably there are many things you can do that meet both of those criteria, and it's almost a case of exploring some different directions to see where you fit most comfortably. And I know that's something you do through your work with students a lot, is trying things and seeing how they fit and seeing if that's something. And you might not know that there's that particular job out there, and that's part of what we're talking about with unknown jobs, is you might not yet know. So what your example shows is you've gone for what your why is really first, and then you found the how, because you've anchored yourself in what your values, your personal values are. Thank you for sharing that. I'm sure we'll come back to that through our conversation, but it really helps to kind of scaffold this conversation to hear your personal story, and it's very, very colourful and very inspirational. Future planning is very complex and it is very personalised, and I think no two people follow the same path or have the same structure to their path. So I can't imagine how you can do it for so many children and have so much success that we see around you. What are some insights? What are some sort of, I suppose, some methods that you do to help manage that process for so many different varied individuals?
So I think we have very close partnerships with our parents. And that's probably the key to making this system work. We can do all sorts of things within our building and within the school and in lessons and classrooms with teachers, but without the parent support, I think that becomes very challenging. So we really do, working with parents is one thing that I think we do very well. The other thing is really trying to steer kids away from thinking about what they want to do and into pathways of contribution, and really considering the ways that they want to spend their time as they move through their own adult life, making a difference. What is it that they would like to change? If they could wave a magic wand tomorrow and something in the world was different, what would that be? And working backwards from there, and maybe they talk about equity. Okay, well, working back from there, what might you need to do in order to help contribute to a more equitable world? It might be thinking about leading with their own strengths, and really thinking is, if honesty and a beauty of appreciation of beauty and excellence is something that they are really, is really innate within them. Let's lean on those strengths to help them carve out that future path, rather than think about what job do I want to do. Because I think a job, we at AISB think a job is not a final destination anymore. It's carving out your journey through a variety of career pathways, a variety of roles, as I have done, and we really encourage our students to do. I would say there are a couple of insights that I'd share.
Yeah, very interesting. And I love the idea of starting with contribution first. So trying to hone in a teenager maybe into what they want to do to make a change. And I'm finding, I don't know if you are, that with this generation that are coming up, one really inspirational trait that seems to be quite consistently there is their need to make an impact on the world in a positive way. It's very uplifting, very hope-filling, and you're nodding, so I feel like I'm getting right. I said it's not just in the world that I see around, but it is more general that this generation really want to make a contribution. So by starting with that question helps presumably to steer them into the right direction of and find their how rather than necessarily I'm going to be an economist. It's what do you want to change by being an economist? So that to me helps them to visualize their journey in a way that that helps them maybe to make that first right step. It's very interesting, and I wonder if you have any examples that help us see how that's worked in your, because you must have seen hundreds of cases of children who've sort of changed their mind maybe from an initial mind because you've asked that question of what they wanted to change or impact or contribute.
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple stories. I'm trying to think of one right now. And I think one that stands out is a student who early on in 10th grade told me they wanted to be a journalist. That was it. They wanted to be a journalist. They wanted to be a journalist. Okay. Why do you want to be a journalist? Well, I just think it's a really cool job and I get to travel. And actually, as we unpacked it, and it wasn't a one session question. This was, we have multiple meetings with our students here to help them carve out their future path. And this was a student who started to get a little bit worried about AI and whether journalism was a role or not. And when we really unpacked it and looked at what they wanted to change, what they wanted to contribute to, they wanted to help tell people stories. They wanted to understand global events with a critical lens. They were getting tired of media channeling them down one very specific idea, and they were thinking, well, how else could I look at this global event from different perspectives? And so when we started to look at that, we pulled it back to maybe, looking at a degree in something like politics or international relations or sociology and really understanding the dynamics of a world from a global climate.
And that's something the student might not have thought to explore.
No, they looked at, I want to be a journalist, therefore I have to study journalism. And it was actually, well, you can be a journalist in a lot of different ways now. And the journalism skill, that kind of actual job can come later. What is now is what do you need to study then to learn about the global world?
The know-how that you need to have to make informed decisions about how you communicate doesn't just come from a quick search. It needs to come from an authenticity that you can only have by really learning it deeply.
Exactly.
And to me, that speaks also of the need to still keep learning at a level of humanities learning and of understanding the world around us. We can't rely on AI and technology for that. This age group that's coming through now that we're working with for their future career placement, their future study placement, they have a specific need, specific characteristics that are kind of common for their generation. How do you empower them, and what do you see as some changes in that generation that might need a different approach?
If I think about a student with anxiety right now, and this is a common challenges that we work with students, is they're under a lot of pressure. The competition for university, for jobs, for careers is really higher than ever before. And I think that comes with a lot of pressure on this generation to seek perfection, to seek numbered grades, numerical grades. A lot of students working to kind of pair their identity with that number. A student's value on themselves is driven by, if I get a 5 or a 6 in this exam, that means I'm a good student. And if I get a 4 or a 5, I'm not a good student. Or they get into one university, but they don't get into another. And I think that identity and that narrative to themselves is something we work really closely on as counsellors here.
So their self-talk.
Their understanding of how their thinking and expectations and pressures can help or harm them. So, a student might come in and say, this, I got the worst grade ever, my life is over. And this does actually happen, right? They come in with those type of statements sometimes. And so it's really helping students pair that back to where's the evidence to actually support that? What are the things you can control in this moment to change the dynamics of how you're feeling? And how can you over time think about how your thoughts are helping you? So a student thinking, I didn't do very well on this test, therefore my life is over, or my future is changed. If we reframe that to, I didn't do well on that test, it really challenged me. I wonder how I can learn and grow from that. Or I didn't do well in this test or unit yet. I wonder what else I need to do in order to. So really thinking about that growth mindset and really thinking about how they can talk to themselves in a way that is helpful, not permissive. We don't want kids going, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It does matter. We want kids to feel successful and academically successful in school. And we want them to speak in a way that helps them grow and continue to learn. And what we see is sometimes they speak to themselves in such a way that actually it becomes one of those barriers to learning that I talked about at the start.
So it's the limiting language. And I suppose we know that now from neuroscience. We know that the way you talk to yourself becomes the way you are. And I know, and I'm sure you've seen that in the world of elite athletes, is that the self-language is almost as important as the training. If you know that if you verbalized yourself that you're going to overcome a barrier, you will overcome that barrier more likely than if you see it as a limiting factor. So that yet is very important for parents.
It's my favourite word
to add. Yeah. So if there's one takeaway
add
for parents,
it to the end of everything
is add yet when students are feeling, because like you say, it should be authentic. They should feel that they might not have done as well as they could, and they shouldn't necessarily see that as a block, but they should find something to hook onto that with the yet. That's easy to hook something else on, which helps you continue to grow and not stay with it for too long in a way that might reduce motivation. Or that's very, very helpful. Thank you. And the other part of this generation, I suppose, is that they also seem very clear about certain things in terms of self-awareness and in terms of sort of articulation. And that could be because maybe they're reading a lot of, or they're seeing a lot online that might be more adult, or it might be more intense in it. So what do you advise parents to do regularly as a way of finding a window into sort of where their child is at from any one day to the next, particularly as a teenager?
I mean, I think there's some key questions that parents ask their kids which are unhelpful. And there's key questions that parents can ask their kids which are super helpful and open up, some are closing, some are opening. And those classic questions of how was your day? Most teenagers are going to respond with fine. What did you learn today? Nothing. Did you do your homework? Yes, leave me alone. So those are, they're closed questions that shut down communication at home. And what we encourage our parents to do is really allow space for conversation to move forward. So, for example, asking your kid when they come home, could you share something you learned today? It's a very different question to what did you learn today? Talking to your student about what was really hard for you today. It gives them a tangible example that they can share with you, as opposed to this big open question. A kid goes through a school day and has how many different social interactions? How many different lessons and subjects are they moving to between a club, between an after-school activity? So saying, how was your day? I mean, I, as an adult, find that question hard to answer. And,
it's not a short answer for most people because the day's long.
Yes. So if you're really interested, ask those slightly broader questions which lead to more open answers. And it can be as simple as, what was something that was challenging for you today? What's hard in your life right now? What's something that I can support you with? What's a show you're watching? What's some music you're listening to? I see you were on that video game for a long time. Could you tell me a little bit more about it? Kids want their parents in their lives and they want to engage, but teenagers are most unlikely to start those conversations. So we as parents have to give them opportunities to share what's going on in their world and be interested in it. And not because they've listened to this podcast and they think that's what they need to do now, but because they're actually curious about how their child is spending time and what is hard for their child.
And I think sometimes the distance can get so far because we aren't necessarily aware of what questions to ask, and we're not getting those answers, that we're getting further and further away from understanding who they are, that it gets harder to connect. And I think one piece of advice I've heard from you and from other counselling colleagues is just to keep being there and to keep asking. And sometimes you'll get no answer, but they know that you're interested. So the reaction might be covering up, or might be masking actually a feeling of gladness that you've asked. And then later they will tell you when you ask again. So that repetitive or available part of you as a parent should be there regardless of their reaction at any one point, knowing that they're a different person every day, that they're growing. And I suppose knowing those questions is really helpful, because I know many parents will ask, what did you have for lunch? Like, who did you have, all the things that maybe weren't as important to their child as, what made you happy today, or what did you find challenging, or how can I help you? And to know that is, I think, also a very kind of transformative relationship builder for parents. So thank you. That's very, 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 very helpful.
And one other quite key for parents to really think about when they're working with their kids is sometimes kids need to come home and complain. And they need to come home and be sad or be angry or be frustrated about something. And as parents often, especially with high schoolers, we want to jump in and protect them from all evil. We want to make their lives comfortable. We want to make them feel good. And so often we want to come with solutions. And again, what I hear from parents a lot is, I try to help them. And one of the most beautiful things you can do as a parent is not actually try and help. Just be present. Just hold a space for them to share how difficult this moment is in their world, and respond with, I'm really sorry that's happening to you.
But by not helping, I know a lot of parents will feel helpless. They will feel that they're leaving their child in a difficult moment for unnecessarily too long.
And I think that's where the parent then works on that reframing.
Right.
The parent realises that in that moment of offering a space for their child to share something difficult, they are helping.
So to stay with the discomfort.
Stay with the discomfort, just like the child needs to do, because in that discomfort is where the solutions often arise. So especially with older students, they, when they're 4 years old and they've come home and your parent probably is going to have to intervene. But a 16 and 17-year-old has more resources than we give them credit for to solve their own problems. And again, at AISB, one of the ways that we address and help kids through these challenges as solutions is we help kids find those solutions. We don't always give them to them. We don't tell them this is what they need to do. They come, they have a problem, and through validating that experience, through giving them a space to share that experience, and then by helping them work through it to find an outcome that they can work with, their discomfort will lift. They will work. Kids are way more resilient and way more resourceful than we can give them credit for sometimes.
Yeah, we here in the sort of school language, we call it agency. I know that's often it's a term used very much in schools, maybe less so in the real world. But that agency is what's also known as independence, and it's something that as a school we're very praised for, and many international schools are very strong in building that independence. And I know the lifestyle, of moving countries and cultures helps grow that independence. But it sounds like that the real key is letting that independence or that agency grow through stepping back a little bit.
Yeah. And it's gradual. And different cultures, like you said, we're in a transient community. Different cultures, different family relationships will all establish their own ways of doing that and what independence looks like. But as teenagers, we're no longer buckling their seatbelt in the back of the car and packing their lunch. We are giving them those tools and that trust that they can function in this slightly more independent world that they need to carve out for themselves.
And I suppose if you look at that over a spectrum of childhood, it's that starts early. It starts from when you carry your child's bag into school and actually they're able to carry it themselves, or you gradually let go of the things that you feel like you're doing as a good parent that might actually benefit them in ways of building their own independence and agency. And so trying to be on a journey of release, I suppose, is one part of that. And that's very important in helping students launch well when they go up to university and also into life as independent, because that's probably one of the most important things, that they can run their lives and then find their own solutions to problems, because they will be landed with their own problems. I always see that as one of the benefits of college. It's the whole picture. It's the holistic learning they do. They're independent more than they are at home. They're reliant a lot on their own resources that we need to help them skill up with. But what are some of the other benefits that you'd say of of course, there's the academic benefits, but these days people question whether college is as worth it as it used to be, whether it's, something that we can gain by screen time learning, by in internships more. What would you say, where's that balance of college versus maybe real world?
And I think college and university is relevant if it's relevant to the experience a child wants to get out of it.
Right.
So a degree, and we say this to our families a lot, a degree in and of itself is not what makes a kid successful. A name of a university in and of itself is not what makes a kid successful. What makes a kid successful is the way they interact with that learning experience that's provided for them. Mm-hmm. So, you can learn how to write Python online now. Mm-hmm. You can turn a screen off if someone is frustrating you. What university in person can do is help you navigate those more adult situations, working with different people, collaborating, those life skills that you don't get a certificate for, you need to practice. Mm-hmm. And so, sharing a room with a dorm, somebody that you don't know very well, and moving in different academic circles to have different discussions, collaborating on projects, gaining, and actually what we see in a lot of universities is they do include a lot of internships or work placements as part of the degree programs now. So work is a bigger part of a university experience than it used to be, which I would say is a really good thing. It's very positive. But really it's a 3 or 4 year window where you get to practice being an adult, but you're not really yet an adult.
Right.
You are, but you're not. You're doing a lot of adult things.
Support. Yeah.
But there's a lot more support. And so we believe it is a really wonderful transition from school into adulthood in a safe way.
Right.
And so that learning experience really is, if a student can engage deeply in their learning, if a kid stays curious, I think learning how to learn is huge. You continue to do that at university, but maybe with a particular specialism or in a different profession. And so I believe in the benefit of university. I think it's very positive. At the same time, it's not for everybody. Mm-hmm. And you can still have those wonderful learning experiences going out into employment, going out into the world, setting up your own business, leading your own company. The experiences the students leave AISB with are incredible and really set them up for success no matter what they choose for their future pathway, whether that be university or something else.
Right. That makes sense. And then, of course, now there's lots more universities that are popping up, or universities that have satellite campuses that are offering more, maybe these integrated programs. Yeah. And it's very exciting, but also pretty overwhelming for a parent who has to help navigate that for their student or for their child. What would be some tips that you would give for parents and students to know whether a college or which college might be a right fit for this?
Yeah, so it's interesting because that's like asking, and we do get parents and students sometimes come in saying like, what's a good university? And it's such a big question. In the same way, it fits differently for different children. In the same way, if someone came and said, what car should I get? You might go to a ranking and say, well, let's get, the best car or the fastest car is a Ferrari. But if you're a family of 5, you can't fit a surfboard into a Ferrari. So, and you're someone who goes to the beach a lot. So I think the same way you are a consumer of other products that you're buying for your own lifestyle, university is a product. You're a consumer of it. The child, I should say, is a consumer of it.
Yes.
So and we work with this in students. So, they really have to think about what kind of life do they want? What kind of, how much do they want to spend for a start? What kind of location do they want to be in? Do we want to be halfway across the world? Do we want to be right on the doorstep? Do we want to be a 2-hour flight away? Do we need time difference? Does weather matter? Do we want to be in the middle of a big bustling city or halfway up a mountain? We have universities everywhere. And so really thinking about, what's the cost? What's the location? What academic program do they want? You can have an academic course called business management in 7 different schools, and every single course is totally different from each other. So
it's worth looking into the course details.
Into the details of the course. How many hours of contact is that student going to have with the professors while they're there? What is the availability of internships and work placements that they can get? What are the assessment styles? Are they going to be learning in a lecture hall of 3,000 students or 30? Does the professor know their name or their number? If they fail, do they get a chance to make it up? Or do they have to, if they fail, are they out? So I think all of those kind of factors are very individualised, very personalised. What student life do they want? Do they want the clubs and sports and activities on campus, or are they happy accessing that in the city locally? what kind of supports do they need? If they're a student who's been here and received counselling support or received learning support, do they still need that at university? So I think really it's very personal.
Right.
And students have to go through that process of refining their own ways to rank schools.
Right.
You can look at a ranking, but what's it ranking? Is it ranking what you're looking for in the same way cars or an iron or a hairdryer is ranking what you need it for?
So it sounds like rankings themselves aren't necessarily as helpful to an individual as their own personalised ranking that you're talking about. So
yeah,
your recommendation based on your industry expertise and working with hundreds and maybe thousands of students at AISB is to follow to structure their ranking and then do some deep dives into what that would look like for them, rather than listen to some rankings that have been run by larger institutions for a more generic audience.
And
would that sound fair?
Yeah, I think, university rankings originated really by universities ranking themselves. That's where it came from. And, in the US, and a way to sell more newspapers and magazines, right? So the US News, I think, was, and again, don't fully quote me on this, but 1980s, they were kind of having a trouble selling magazines. And so they wrote to lots of professors at colleges and lots of the directors and said, who do you think the best college is? And they produced a rank on that. And then suddenly that became quite popular. And then they started to rank colleges based on their selectivity, which sent some universities into, okay, well, if I PR and market my university and get more kids to apply, then I go higher up the rankings, because the rankings were developed based on selectivity and how many kids you actually say no to.
Interesting.
So when a student's looking at rankings, I think if it's ranking what they need it to rank, and since that, rankings have become more tailored towards specific needs. So I would ask that if families want to use rankings, they would look at student satisfaction surveys. How satisfied are the students with the accommodation, with the lifestyle, with the levels of teaching, the quality of education? Maybe look at employment rates coming out of a particular university. Do students get jobs as a result of studying at that university? That's going to be more important to a student than how rejective they are. If they only accept 3% of the students that apply, that doesn't mean they're, all of those other students aren't good enough to get in. That just means they've built a system that benefits the college rather than benefiting the student. And so I think really think about it as a consumer of any product in the world. What's important to you? What's going to give you the best learning experience as you're exploring and looking at colleges, and then how do we make that fit? And that's where we come in, as we can then help. Once they know what they want, we can help work with them to find schools that match them.
Because you spent a lot of time touring new, old, existing kind of future universities around the world and creating those relationships with their admissions departments. So you're a huge resource to help them tailor their next steps once they've explored the sort of world of study in the areas that they're interested in, presumably. One thing I feel is quite important for our listeners as well to understand is, what is the balance of parents versus students in that application process or the choice process for what they're going to do after school? So if we're using the term agency, where is the balance of that agency, and how can parents support? What do you think the parents' role should be in that process?
That should definitely be a balance. We need... And I think I said earlier, we work really closely with parents, and think that partnership does start early. Students really need to be leading and proving, I think, to their parents that whatever they're feeling is the right path for them. It's easier to get parent support if you're showing it. So, for example, a student who may be interested in engineering. Being good at math and physics is one aspect of that. And at the same time, what else are they doing to show their parents and kind of get their parents to buy in to supporting them in applying to a program in engineering? Maybe they're in the robotics club at school. Maybe they are really working with the Math Honours Society. Perhaps they are working on a research paper and working with the physics teacher to think about a way a lab could improve their learning journey. I think if students are able to show their parents that they're serious about what they want, it's easier for a parent to buy in to that. in the same way, if a student knows themselves really well, it's easier to advocate for themselves. I knew I had to be around people as a kid. So if a child, and parents know their kids the best, they do.
And it sounds like your father knew to ask the right questions.
Yes.
As a management consultant. He knew that he needed to go deeper to help you think about that more. And then because you did think about it more, you kind of tried these different versions of you on, and then felt that was the most comfortable for you. And that sounds like a really important role for parents to do, to be able to let their children gain the agency of knowing themselves.
Knowing themselves.
Right.
And when they know themselves, they get to explore. I think we don't want kids to be passengers in a learning journey. We want them to be very active. And I think that comes to that agency. They can do that in multiple ways. They can be a huge contributor within a classroom environment, but they can also engage in lots of clubs and leaderships and service and experiences outside of the classroom to help build a profile to, again, really show their parents that this is something not only I think I need to do, but something I'm choosing to do. And I think it's very difficult from a parent to look at your child who's choosing to spend their time in the arts. That's where they're spending every single day after school. For a parent to turn around to say, you probably don't want to study art. I think it's kind of the I'm trying to think.
It's a hard truth, but it's an important one. It's an awareness of what your language is how far it's going.
There's a British phrase. The proof is in the pudding. I think that's the phrase.
Right,
I was trying to think.
Right.
The proof is in the pudding, and it's really, if at the end of the day, like at the end of a meal, that kid is saying, this is what I need and this is what I want. And a parent has watched their child explore and experiment with all these different pathways and all these different skills and clubs and activities and leadership, and they've gone out and sought knowledge or shown curiosity. So I think that's how parents can support, is really, like you said, watching, listening, listening.
Being present and making space for the child's knowledge of themselves.
And actually here in our program in the high school, we don't sit in our one-to-one parent and student college meetings and lead it. The child leads it. So
Brilliant.
We actually ask the parents, we kind of role model with them of how to take a back seat when your child is sitting there presenting,
Brilliant.
These are the courses I want to take next year. This is the program of study. This is my pathway of contribution. These are the universities I've researched. I mean, parents are blown away when they sit in those meetings with us sometimes, and the student has this presentation where they know what they want.
Wow.
And the parents just you've proved it. You've shown me that this is what you want. So yes,
and that's
support.
a good question for parents to ask if their child is at that stage, to really ask what part of the journey they're on, or how where they are, and maybe try and again make space for that.
Yeah.
We're going for a break. You're listening to the Voices of Learning podcast by the faculty here at AISB. If you like what you're hearing and you're new to international schools or new to AISB, please book a visit and you can connect with us through our admissions office to learn more by emailing admissions@aisb.hu. Welcome back to the Voices of Learning podcast, where we're continuing our conversation about all things learning with one of our counsellors, Pauline Davidson. So here comes the twist, Pauline. I've got a little bit of a surprise for you. I know you're used to being prepared for all sorts. We have a quote that I'd like your thoughts on. And your instinct thoughts would be the best. So it'll be a little bit of a surprise for you. It's a quote by Aristotle, the philosopher. Good habits formed at youth make all the difference.
Oh, yes, they do.
They do.
Do I just say yes or no?
So yes.
I mean, yes, and can I actually change that? Yes and no. Yes, because the neuroplasticity of the brain is best in childhood. You are, if you can develop those good habits, you have habits for life. I also believe, though, that it's never too late to learn good habits. So I think adults and particularly parents, we can change the way we interact with our children. And I think sometimes parents come into our offices saying, well, my kid's 16, they're never going to listen. This is how it is. I still think you can change that habit of conversation as an adult, and children can change it. So I think yes and no, and yes.
It's good to have some complexity in these simple days. No, it's good to see more than just one answer to that, but depending. So very, very, again, just being really aware of what the habit is and what the stage of life is. So we got another quote. Age considers, youth ventures. And this is by Rabindranath Tagore. Age considers, youth ventures.
Yeah. I mean, age considers and ventures and youth considers and ventures, I think. Let's tie those together in my mind, I think. Yeah, and I think that's where I love working with teenagers, actually. If I think of the youth venture part of that, they are such beautiful risk takers.
Right.
We are growing, like I learn and am inspired by the students in our school every day. I think the risks they take to venture out of a comfort zone, to push themselves into situations, get on, this for me is very uncomfortable. Okay, this isn't, my comfort zone. And I actually had a couple of students today who saw me and they said, "Are you okay, Miss Evans?" I said, "Yeah, I'm a bit nervous." Wow. And they coach, they talked to me. I said, "Miss Davidson, it's, and they're almost more practiced now than we are at being out of their comfort zones.
Wow. Yeah.
That I actually think the inspiration we get from the students around us into how they venture is something we can all learn from.
Can be inspired by. Very good. The last quote is by a British novelist, Anita Bruckner, and it's, "Time misspent in youth is sometimes all the freedom one ever has."
Just time misspent.
Time misspent is all the freedom one ever has. Time misspent
is all the freedom we have. And I am not sure you can misspend any time.
Right.
I think maybe the only way you can is choosing to not learn, choosing to not engage. That would be time misspent. But time taking risks, time connecting with others, time doing things that you love, time balancing yourself, time resting, leaning into those wonderful things that life provides us. I think it's,
So misspent is quite subjective.
Misspent
it can be,
It
can be a great thing, but I suppose if we're not spending it in a way
that fulfills us,
or a way with integrity, maybe that's less. So I've got some quick controversial questions that I'd like your thoughts on.
Okay.
Instinctual thoughts again, and so some of them might come as a surprise. Some of them might be something that you're dealing with through your daily work. Social media, allowed or not allowed under 16?
Allowed with boundaries in place and with parent engagement with it. I think if a kid comes off their phone with social media in a bad mood, the parent should be able to have access to whatever is happening on their phone.
Wow. So that much. So really to not leave them on there without the ability to access what they're learning.
Not necessarily to invade their privacy, but to make, they don't yet know how to be fully social, particularly at the age 13, 14. They're still learning those skills. And I think mood is a really good indicator of whether the interaction they're having on social media is positive or negative for them. And so a parent's role to be able to step in is valuable.
So that's my next question, but you've answered it, is whether we should. Great, though. It shows that, research shows us that young people are very impressionable, always have been part of their brain growth. And that's really the question, was whether we as parents and we as educators and caregivers in their lives should be aware of their digital diet.
Yes.
So your answer to that was yes, we absolutely should. And I think your advice empowers parents where they think they might not be able to have the authority to step into.
And I think it's not stepping in and taking over, it's showing interest.
Right.
What are you learning on your social media today? What was there? And start with something comical. What was a funny feed you saw today? What was a funny meme? What was something that you saw on TikTok that was hilarious? Having a shared engagement about social media rather than a them versus us. Do it together, explore it together.
Very, very useful information or advice, I'm sure, for all the parents listening. Thank you. So there's another couple of questions. One about university. Should everyone go? Yes or no?
I think students need to graduate from school to move into a future that is meaningful and relevant and purposeful for them. But that is highly personalised. For many students, it still is university. For others, university life may be different. So hospitality school, for example, they start the first year and they're working, they're making the beds, they're serving reception, they're doing the coffee, barista. So I think that experience of what university looks like can be different for every child. Doing something meaningful. They shouldn't finish school and watch Netflix forever.
Right.
Something meaningful.
Right. Very wise. Your role is very, very key to supporting our students' success. Should counselling in schools lean more towards academic support or more towards well-being, emotional, social, emotional well-being?
I do not see them as distinct areas. I think it's very difficult to have an academic conversation with a child without considering their well-being. And I think knowing the impact of kind of all the anxieties surrounding futures and the world of work, it's very difficult to have a conversation about well-being without thinking about future planning. So I love what we do at AISB. We are a comprehensive model as counsellors, so we work from both realms, and I think they each are deserving of each other's complementary relationship.
You can't really have one without the other.
No, you can't have one without the other.
Okay, this might be a similar answer, but let's try it. Future belongs to linear paths or more of a patchwork career?
Oh, definitely a patchwork quilt.
Okay.
Definitely. I can't say anything other because that is exactly what my journey has been. So patchwork quilt.
And we see that in many of our students who come back to alumni reunions who've gone through even quite early in their careers, quite a wide range of different careers. They've tried them on and they've worked out who they are through that process.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. This is unfortunately what we've had time for today. Thank you, Pauline. And thank you, everyone who's been watching, listening. Thank you for your time. If you'd like to get more than just this sneak peek, please do follow AISB. We try and put out a lot of this kind of helpful information for parents, for students, through different methods, through short blogs and in our social media feeds. Or please do get in touch with us. If you've got any questions or remarks, we really appreciate it. This is a series we've started up for you, for those interested in the impact of learning. And just like AISB, we're full of opportunities to consider more topics and bringing more experts. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.